Have you ever caught yourself in a mental loop? One anxious thought leads to another, and before you know it, your brain feels like a runaway train. You try and talk yourself out of it. Maybe you tell yourself to calm down, be rational, or think positive, but none of it works. You just feel more out of control. If that sounds familiar, it's not because you're bad at coping, it's because your brain is doing exactly what it's wired to do under stress. And in that moment, logic alone can't help you. I'm Dr. Tracey Marks, a psychiatrist, and in this video, I'm going to give you a set of tools I call your thought spiral emergency kit. These are 3 techniques that can quickly interrupt the spiral and bring your thinking brain back online, especially when nothing else is working. Let's first look at what actually is happening in your brain during a thought spiral. When you're overwhelmed, your amygdala, your brain's emotional alarm system, takes over. And this is what we call a limbic hijack. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for reasoning, planning, and impulse control, gets temporarily shut down. And that's why you can't just think your way out of it. Your brain has shifted from logical mode to survival mode. What you need in that moment is not insight, it's a reset. And that's exactly what these 3 techniques are designed to do. Let's walk through them. The first technique is cold shock, using ice or cold water. And this one might surprise you because it's not psychological, it's physiological. When you apply cold to your face or neck, it activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the part responsible for rest and recovery. This is called the mammalian dive response. It's a hardwired reflex that lowers your heart rate and breathing, reduces cortisol levels, and interrupts the neural circuits that are feeding your thought spiral. And here's how you can do it. You can splash cold water on your face, or hold an ice pack or cold soda can even, or even a bag of frozen veggies against your cheeks or the back of your neck. And just 30 seconds is enough to start calming your body. If you don't have access to cold ice or cold water, you can even step outside in cool weather or open up a window and take deep breaths of cold air. The goal is to create a sudden shift in your physical state that interrupts the mental loop. And this works best when you're in a high-intensity spiral, like during a panic attack, or when your heart is racing and you feel physically out of control. You don't need to talk yourself down because your body will do the work for you. The second technique is cognitive diffusion, and it comes from acceptance and commitment therapy, and it's very simple. When you're stuck in a spiral of negative thinking, your mind is fused with the thought. If you think, I'm a failure, your brain treats it as truth. Cognitive diffusion separates the thought from your mind by creating distance from the thought so that you can see it for what it is, a mental event and not a fact. And you can do this by inserting one short phrase. I'm having the thought that. So instead of saying, I'm going to mess up this presentation, you say, I'm having the thought that I'm going to mess up this presentation. Instead of, everyone thinks I'm incompetent, you say, I'm having the thought that everyone thinks I'm incompetent. This subtle shift moves the thought from something that you are to something that you notice. And that reactivates your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that helps you pause and reflect. And this works well when your spiral is driven by repetitive self-talk or worst-case scenario thinking. And the good thing is, it doesn't require you to challenge or change the thought, which can feel impossible when you're emotionally amped up. You're simply changing the relationship to the thought, and that shift in perspective can be enough to break the spiral's momentum. The third technique is bilateral stimulation, and this one might be new to you, but it's based on solid neuroscience and is actually the core mechanism used in EMDR therapy, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and is used for processing trauma and stuck thoughts. Bilateral stimulation involves alternating movement or sensation on both sides of the body. And this activates both hemispheres of your brain simultaneously, which helps interrupt the neural circuits responsible for rumination and activates areas associated with emotional regulation. So here's what's happening in your brain. When you're spiraling, you often get stuck in left brain analytical loops. Bilateral stimulation forces both hemispheres to communicate with each other, which can shift you out of purely analytical thinking and into more integrated, balanced state of mind. The simplest form is alternating knee taps. You sit comfortably and tap your right knee with your right hand and then your left knee with your left hand back and forth for about 30 seconds to a minute. You can also do this by standing, alternating your knees as if you're marching in place slowly. Another option is the butterfly hug. You cross your arms over your chest so each hand is on the opposite shoulder. Then alternate tapping your shoulders with your hands. Or you can try cross-lateral movements, like touching your right hand to your left knee, then your left hand to your right knee. The key is alternating rhythmic patterns. You want a steady, moderate pace, not fast or frantic, and think of it like a metronome for your nervous system. As you do the movement, you might notice your breathing naturally starts to slow down and your thoughts begin to feel less urgent. What makes bilateral stimulation especially effective for thought spirals is that it creates what researchers call dual awareness. You're simultaneously aware of the distressing thoughts and the physical sensation of the movement. And this dual focus helps prevent you from getting completely absorbed in the mental content. Now that you know these 3 techniques, how do you decide which one to use? It depends on the intensity of your spiral and your current situation. Ice or cold shock works best for high-intensity spirals when your nervous system is really activated. If your heart is racing, your breathing is shallow, or you feel that hot, panicky sensation, cold exposure can provide rapid relief. Cognitive diffusion is ideal when you're caught in repetitive thought loops but aren't in extreme physical distress. It's particularly useful when you're somewhere that you can't easily access cold water or you need to be discreet about what you're doing. Bilateral stimulation works well for moderate to high-intensity spirals when you're mentally looping but you're still aware of your surroundings. It has the advantage of being something that you can do anywhere. It's also helpful if you tend to get stuck in analytical thinking or if your spirals involve a lot of self-criticism. You can use these techniques individually or in combination. You might start with cold shock to calm your nervous system, then move to bilateral stimulation to interrupt the thought pattern, and finish with cognitive diffusion to maintain some distance from the thoughts. The key to making these techniques work is practice. I know that sounds counterintuitive since these are emergency tools, but your brain learns through repetition. If you wait until you're into a full spiral to try one of these for the first time, they won't feel effective. So here's what I suggest. Pick one technique and practice it when you're relatively calm. Maybe when you notice that first hint of worry starting, or just as a daily practice. And that way, when you really need it, your brain already knows what to do. You also want to develop awareness of your personal early warning signs. What does the beginning of a thought spiral feel like in your body? Maybe it's tension in your shoulders, a pit in your stomach, or feeling your thoughts speeding up. The earlier you can catch the spiral, the easier it is to interrupt. These emergency techniques work best when combined with the prevention strategies we've covered in previous videos. Think of thought checking and self-compassion as your first line of defense, while these 3 techniques are your backup plan when the first line doesn't hold. We've covered quite a bit in this module on cognitive techniques for resilience. We've talked about how to check your thoughts for accuracy, how to treat yourself with compassion when things go wrong, and how to recognize and challenge cognitive distortions, and now how to interrupt thought spirals when they're already in motion. Together, these tools can give you a comprehensive toolkit for managing your mental landscape. In the next module within this resilience series, overall series, we're going to shift our focus to something equally important for resilience: social connection and relationships. We'll explore how human connection affects your brain, how to build and maintain supportive relationships, and how to navigate conflict in ways that strengthen rather than damage your connection with others. For now, I encourage you to choose one of today's 3 techniques and practice it this week, ideally before you're in crisis mode. Notice how it feels in your body and mind. Pay attention to which technique feels most natural for you, because that's probably the one that you'll reach for when you really need it. I know I've said this before, but it bears repeating. When you build resilience, you don't become someone who never struggles with difficult thoughts. You become someone who has reliable tools to work with those thoughts when they arise. And that's exactly what you're building now, one technique at a time. If you found this video helpful, let me know in the comments, which of these 3 tools do you want to try first? Thanks for watching today. I'll see you in the next video.